June 4th, 1943. A train rattles through the deep darkness of a Texas night. Inside, a German soldier, an elite veteran of Erwin Rommel's famed Afrika Korps, presses his face against the cool glass. His name is Unteroffizier Werner Burkhardt, and in his hand, a pencil trembles as he secretly scribbles in a hidden diary. The words he writes are treason. They are a heresy so profound that if discovered by his own officers, they would earn him a one-way trip to solitary confinement, or worse. He writes, "The Americans must be lying to us. No nation could possess such abundance while fighting a war on two fronts." What has he seen that could so thoroughly shatter the foundations of his entire worldview? It wasn't a secret weapon. It wasn't a display of military might. It was something far more fundamental and far more terrifying. Lights. Through the train window for hundreds of miles, he has witnessed an endless constellation of electricity. Every farmhouse, no matter how remote, every sleepy town street corner, every shop window, all blazing with light at 10 o'clock at night, burning with a casual, thoughtless intensity that was simply impossible. You have to understand, for 3 years, Nazi Germany had been plunged into a deep, mandatory darkness. Strict blackout regulations were the law of the land. But even before the war, the promise of progress was a hollow one. In 1939, rural electrification barely reached 20% of German farms. The night was a place of shadows and fear. Yet here, in what Nazi propaganda had insisted was a decadent, collapsing America, crippled by the Great Depression and torn apart by racial strife, electricity flowed as freely as water. This single observation was a crack in the dam of his ideology, but it was only the beginning. That night, as 1,850 of Rommel's finest soldiers stepped off that train in Mexia, Texas, they were unknowingly embarking on the most profound psychological transformation in modern history. This is the story of how the Third Reich's ideology wasn't defeated by bombs or bullets, but by the overwhelming, undeniable, and soul-shattering reality of American industrial might. It was a systematic demolition of a belief system, carried out not in interrogation rooms, but in train cars, on farms, and in factory parking lots. The war for their minds had already begun, and the most powerful weapon was the country itself. To truly grasp the depth of the shock these German soldiers felt, we first have to step into their world. We have to understand the bubble of lies they lived in, meticulously constructed by Joseph Goebbels' propaganda ministry. For over a decade, the German people, and especially its soldiers, had been fed a steady diet of stories about the United States. America, they were told, was a failed state. It was a nation of mongrels, a chaotic blend of races that lacked the purity and strength of the Aryan master race. It was a country financially controlled by a cabal of Jewish bankers, its industry hollowed out and ruined by the Great Depression, its people lazy, soft, and incapable of the discipline required for modern warfare. Goebbels' films and radio broadcasts painted a picture of breadlines, strikes, and social decay. American workers were depicted as degenerate jazz listeners, their soldiers as undisciplined cowboys who would fold at the first sign of a real fight. This wasn't just casual slander. It was a core tenet of Nazi ideology. The supposed weakness and chaos of American democracy was the ultimate proof of the superiority of Germany's totalitarian order. While Germany was building a powerful, unified state, America was rotting from the inside out, and the soldiers believed it. Why wouldn't they? The Germany they had left behind was a nation on a total war footing. Every ounce of steel, every lump of coal, every calorie of food was ruthlessly allocated by the state. Civilians endured years of severe rationing. Meat was a monthly luxury. Real coffee was a distant memory, replaced by ersatz substitutes made from acorns and barley. Butter was a treasure. The nights were dark, not just from the blackouts, but from the simple lack of resources. The war machine consumed everything. So when May 13th, 1943 arrived, and the Afrika Korps finally surrendered in Tunisia, these soldiers were exhausted, starved but still believers. They were the elite. They had fought the British to a standstill and earned the respect of their enemies. Now, as prisoners, they braced for the worst. They expected hardship, cruelty, and confirmation of everything they'd been taught about their captors. The first crack in that ideological armor came almost immediately. Not with a blow, but with a meal. As they waited in makeshift camps in Oran, Algeria for transport, the U.S. Army began processing the nearly 275,000 captured Axis soldiers with a terrifying efficiency. Identity cards were photographed, medical exams completed, inoculations administered, all with an organizational precision that a logistics officer from the Wehrmacht could only dream of. But then came the food. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, captured with the 21st Panzer Division, wrote a letter home that perfectly captures the initial disbelief. "The Americans fed us better than we had eaten in 6 months of desert warfare," he wrote. "White bread, real coffee, meat twice a day. We thought it was propaganda that they were trying to impress us. We didn't realize this was their standard military ration. White bread." To a soldier raised on dense, dark German rye bread, white bread was a symbol of decadent luxury. And here it was, being handed out freely to defeated enemies. The cognitive dissonance was immediate and jarring. They reasoned it away. This must be a temporary trick, a show of force before the real, harsh reality of captivity began. They couldn't have been more wrong. The true assault on their minds was about to begin, and it would take place on the high seas, aboard the very symbols of the industrial power they had so fatally underestimated. As the German POWs were marched towards the docks in Oran, they braced for the transatlantic crossing. In their minds, they pictured what German transport would have been: cramped, filthy cargo holds of merchant ships. Or worse. The journey itself was meant to be part of the punishment. But what they saw waiting for them in the harbor was something else entirely. It was a fleet of strange, utilitarian-looking vessels, all seemingly identical, all freshly painted, all flying the American flag. These were the Liberty ships, and they were the first true lesson in the mathematics of American power. These ships were not beautiful. They were simple, mass-produced cargo vessels, welded together rather than riveted, designed with one purpose in mind: to be built as quickly as humanly possible. And the speed of their construction was something the German mind, accustomed to precision craft but not mass production on this scale, could not properly compute. One of these ships, the SS Robert E. Peary, had been built from keel laying to launch in an astonishing 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. At the peak of production in 1943, American shipyards were launching 3 of these vessels every single day. A total of 2,710 would be built during the war. The Germans, of course, didn't know these specific numbers yet, but they were about to get a visceral, unforgettable lesson in the reality behind them. These ships had just finished delivering thousands of tons of tanks, trucks, and ammunition to the European theater. Now, rather than sail back empty, they were being loaded with human cargo. The 2-week voyage became the second phase of their psychological demolition. And the most effective weapon in the American arsenal turned out to be the ship's garbage can. Feldwebel Kurt Zimmermann of the 90th Light Division kept a detailed account. He watched, mesmerized, as the American sailors went about their daily lives. What he saw broke his brain. The ship's crew, he wrote, disposed of more food waste each day than my entire company had received in weekly rations during the final months in Africa. Imagine the scene. A German soldier who had spent months fantasizing about a piece of stale bread or a sliver of horse meat, watches an American sailor take a few bites from a thick steak, decide he's full, and casually toss the rest into the ocean. He sees whole loaves of white bread, barely touched, being thrown away. Gallons of milk, slightly past their prime, poured over the side. Zimmerman noted, with a sense of awe and horror, "They did this openly, without thought, not to mock us, but because to them this waste meant nothing. Their supply was limitless. This wasn't propaganda. This was something far more potent. Propaganda can be dismissed as lies, but you cannot argue with a garbage can full of perfectly good food. It was a tangible, undeniable demonstration of a level of abundance that was simply alien to their experience. The message was clear. This country can afford to waste more food than we can afford to eat." Then came the technological shocks. The prisoners were smart, observant men. Many were engineers, technicians, and officers with technical training. Lieutenant Colonel Wilhelm von Stauben, an aristocrat whose family had served in every German war since Frederick the Great, described a moment of chilling clarity. "As our ship approached the American coast," he later wrote, "I watched the radar antenna rotating above the bridge. This technology, which we believed only we, and perhaps the British, possessed in limited quantities, was standard equipment on a cargo vessel. On a cargo vessel. Not a battleship, not a cruiser. A simple, mass-produced transport. The implication was staggering. If the Americans could afford to put their most advanced technology on their most basic ships, what other technological marvels did they possess?" Von Stauben's conclusion was swift and devastating. "It was then I first suspected that Germany had already lost the war. He hadn't even set foot on American soil, but the sheer casual display of material and technological superiority on a simple boat ride was enough to convince a Prussian military aristocrat that his nation's cause was doomed. The voyage was over, but the re-education had just begun. The reality they were about to encounter would make the limitless food on the ship seem like a mere appetizer." On August 2nd, 1943, the Liberty ships carrying the veterans of the Afrika Korps steamed into the vast harbor of Norfolk, Virginia. As the men crowded the decks, the last remnants of Goebbels' propaganda about a weak and crumbling America evaporated in the humid summer air. The Norfolk Naval Base wasn't just a port. It was a sprawling industrial city dedicated to the machinery of war. It covered over 4,000 acres, its docks stretching for miles in every direction, lined with a forest of cranes that moved with a relentless, synchronized grace, loading and unloading dozens of ships simultaneously. Gefreiter Johann Weber, who had been a factory worker in the industrial Ruhr Valley, stared in disbelief. In his secret diary, he tried to quantify the impossible. He counted 47 cargo ships being worked on at that moment. He noted that in a single day, this one American port handled more tonnage than the entire German port of Hamburg could manage in a week. Each crane, he wrote, lifted loads that would have required a dozen men and horses in Germany. They moved with electric power, smoothly, continuously, without the coal smoke that choked our industrial cities. As they were marched from the ships to the waiting trains, the next shockwave hit them. The route took them past the parking lots for the dock workers. They were filled with hundreds upon hundreds of civilian automobiles, cars. In Germany, owning a private car was a symbol of immense wealth or high party status. The Volkswagen, the people's car promised to the masses since 1934, remained a propaganda fantasy. Yet here, ordinary laborers, the men loading the ships, drove to work in their own private vehicles. It was a vision of working-class prosperity that simply did not compute. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared them for the trains. These soldiers were veterans of the European theater. They knew military transport. It meant being crammed into 40 and 8 wagons, boxcars designed to hold either 40 men or 8 horses, where you slept on straw and relieved yourself in a bucket. They shuffled towards the tracks, expecting the American equivalent. Instead, they were led to a line of full passenger coaches. Pullman cars. Hauptmann Radke wrote, "We boarded like tourists, not prisoners." They stepped inside to find padded seats, clean floors, and functioning toilets. Some cars were dining cars, complete with white tablecloths and silver cutlery. Others were observation cars with massive panoramic windows. The ultimate symbol of this impossible luxury came in the form of an apology from an American sergeant. Radke recorded the moment with astonishment. The sergeant was sorry that the air conditioning wasn't working properly in their car. "Air conditioning," Radke wrote. "In August, we had believed such luxury existed only in Hitler's personal train." This single detail was more powerful than any leaflet drop or radio broadcast. It communicated, on a deeply personal level, the chasm between the two nations. The American standard of comfort for its enemies exceeded the German standard of luxury for its leader. The 3-day train journey from Virginia to the camps in Texas and Oklahoma became a rolling execution of Nazi ideology. As the train moved west, the prisoners were glued to the windows, witnessing an America that, according to their indoctrination, could not possibly exist. Night fell, but the country refused to go dark. Every small town, Martinsville, Danville, Greensboro, blazed with light. Main streets were lined with illuminated signs, shop windows glowed, and houses had lights burning in multiple rooms. A casual waste of energy that would have been a criminal offense in Germany. They passed factories running night shifts, their windows aglow, their parking lots full of workers' cars, even at midnight. Obergefreiter Meyer, whose own father was a loyal Nazi Party official in Hamburg, wrote a letter that was intercepted by censors. "We passed through dozens of cities that first night. Each one had more electricity than all of Hamburg. The guards told us this was normal. I called him a liar. He just shrugged and said we would see." As the train crossed into the industrial heartland of Tennessee, Kentucky, and beyond, the sheer scale of American production became the central character in their story. Through the windows, they saw a seemingly endless parade of factories, each one larger than anything most of them had ever seen. The Alcoa aluminum plant in Tennessee stretched for 3 miles along a river, consuming more electricity than the entire city of Munich. Near Louisville, they passed the Rubber Town complex, where 4 massive synthetic rubber plants had sprung from empty fields in just 18 months, producing nearly 7 times Germany's peak annual output. Then came the sight that haunted the Luftwaffe pilots among them. As the train passed Ford's Willow Run plant near Detroit, they saw it. A building so vast it had its own weather system. And pouring from its doors was a steady stream of B-24 Liberator bombers. At its peak, this single factory, built in just 9 months, was rolling out a new 4-engine heavy bomber every 63 minutes. Hauptmann Verli, a pilot shot down over Tunisia, counted 17 B-24s in various stages of completion visible from his window. "We had been told American planes were inferior, hastily built," he recalled, "but I could see the precision of the assembly lines. These were not inferior aircraft. They were simply built faster than we could imagine possible." The journey continued, a relentless panorama of power. In St. Louis, they crossed the Mississippi River, watching barges below carrying more grain than the entire German harvest. In Kansas City, they stopped at a stockyard where tens of thousands of cattle waited for slaughter, the smell of meatpacking plants filling the air for miles. A guard bought hamburgers for the prisoners from a station vendor. A thick patty of beef, cheese, and vegetables on a soft white bun for 15 cents. He bought 20 of them with a $1 bill. For men who had subsisted on scraps, this simple act was a revelation. This wasn't a special occasion. This was just lunch. Every mile clicked by on the tracks was another tick of a psychological time bomb. Every illuminated farmhouse, every worker's automobile, every factory humming through the night, every hamburger bought with pocket change was another piece of evidence proving that their entire belief system was built on a foundation of lies. They were not traveling through a country on the verge of collapse. They were traveling through the engine room of the future, a future that was about to run them over. After the disorienting journey through America's industrial heartland, the final destination was reached. The POW camps. For the German soldiers, the term camp conjured images of bleak, muddy enclosures, barbed wire, and misery. They expected this to be the moment the American facade finally dropped, revealing the harsh reality of captivity. What they found instead was the next level of cognitive demolition. Camp Hearn in Texas, for example, was built in just 4 months. It housed thousands of prisoners in conditions that, for many, were a significant improvement over their civilian lives back in Germany. They were assigned to wooden barracks, not tents. These barracks had electric lights, a luxury in rural Germany. They had flush toilets and hot showers, technologies that were still uncommon outside of major German cities. The buildings were warm by steam heat in the winter. Each structure was built with more finished lumber than an entire German village might possess for private construction. The camp hospital was a particular source of astonishment, especially for the German doctors and medics among the prisoners. Oberstabsarzt Dr. Friedrich Bauer, a respected surgeon, found himself in a facility that was better equipped than most civilian hospitals in Germany. There were modern X-ray machines, pristine surgical suites, and a pharmacy stocked with supplies that had been unavailable in the Reich since 1941. And then they saw it, penicillin. This new miracle drug was the stuff of legend on the front lines, a rumor whispered about in field hospitals. German soldiers were still dying from infections that could be easily treated with basic sulfa drugs, which were in short supply. Here, in an American prison camp, the doctors were using penicillin freely, lavishing their most advanced medicine on enemy soldiers with even minor infections. It was an act of medical generosity that was utterly incomprehensible. The camp kitchen became another classroom in American abundance. Prisoners assigned to kitchen duty discovered a world of modern appliances, massive walk-in refrigerators, industrial electric mixers, automated dishwashers, and huge gas ranges. The daily food ration was established by the Geneva Convention to be equivalent to that of an American soldier in a non-combat role. This translated to a diet of fresh milk, eggs, meat, and vegetables that German civilians had not seen since before the war began. The sheer quantity was staggering. Feldwebel Otto Krebs, who had been a hotel chef in Munich, wrote in his diary one evening, "Today, we threw away more food than my family has seen in 3 years. This wasn't spoiled food. It was simply excess." American military regulations required the cooks to prepare 10% more food than was technically needed to ensure every single prisoner could receive a full ration. The surplus was simply discarded. "I wept as I threw perfectly good bread into the garbage," Krebs wrote. This wasn't cruelty. It was a byproduct of a system of such overwhelming plenty that waste was literally built into the regulations. By the fall of 1943, a labor shortage in American agriculture and industry led to a decision that would prove more destructive to Nazi ideology than any planned propaganda program. The U.S. government authorized the use of POWs as laborers. This crucial step took the Germans out from behind the barbed wire and put them directly inside the American economic machine. They were trucked daily to work sites, traveling through the heartland without blindfolds, seeing everything. They worked on farms and witnessed a level of mechanization that bordered on science fiction. In Nebraska, a single combine harvester did the work of 100 men. The fields of wheat and corn stretched to the horizon, each farm larger than a German county. Gefreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann, working on a farm near Scottsbluff, was stunned. The farmer's son, a boy of 16, drove a tractor worth more than everything my father had earned in his lifetime, he wrote. When I mentioned this, the boy laughed and said it wasn't even a particularly good tractor. In the Central Valley of California, prisoners picked fruit in orchards so vast they seemed to have no end. They watched in horror as mountains of oranges were bulldozed into pits, simply to maintain market prices. For men whose families were slowly starving, the sight of this strategic waste was psychologically shattering. "They destroy food to keep prices stable," wrote one prisoner. "We begged to be allowed to send it to our families." The guards were sympathetic, but explained it was impossible. They worked in canneries and mills, witnessing automated production lines run by women and elderly men that outproduced the top German factories staffed by skilled male workers. Near Detroit, prisoners unloading coal could see the Ford River Rouge complex across the water, a city-sized factory churning out jeeps, engines, and tanks, its parking lots filled with thousands of cars owned by the workers. Every day was a new lesson. Every farm, every factory, every interaction with an ordinary American was another piece of evidence. The lie of German superiority was being crushed under the weight of John Deere tractors, Campbell's soup cans, and the sheer, undeniable reality of a nation that could fight a global war on two fronts without its citizens even having to give up their cars. The foundation of their Nazi faith had been built on the idea of scarcity and struggle. Here, they were drowning in a world of effortless abundance, and their ideology was unraveling with every passing day. By the winter of 1943, the constant, overwhelming exposure to American reality began to cause what U.S. intelligence officers started calling ideological collapse syndrome. The psychological dam had broken. The prisoners were no longer just shocked. They were profoundly and irrevocably changed. The core tenets of their Nazi beliefs in material superiority, racial purity, and moral strength were being dismantled, not by force, but by observation. The first to go was the myth of German industrial and material superiority. It was a laughable notion now. They had seen Willow Run, they had seen the Norfolk shipyards, they had seen the Nebraska harvests. A report from one camp intelligence officer noted, "The prisoners no longer argue when shown production statistics. They have seen too much. The most fanatical Nazis have become quiet. They still maintain loyalty to Germany, but no longer speak of victory." But the collapse went deeper than just admitting industrial defeat. The next pillar to crumble was the central Nazi doctrine of racial ideology. Goebbels had taught them that America was a weak, mongrel nation, its strength sapped by its diversity. What the prisoners saw was the exact opposite. They worked in factories alongside women, doing men's work with incredible efficiency. They saw African-American workers operating complex machinery, defying the racist caricatures they had been fed. They saw a nation of immigrants, Poles, Italians, Irish, Germans, all working together, unified in the war effort. This diverse, impure nation wasn't weak. It was the most powerful and organized country on earth. The most devastating weapon against their ideology, however, proved to be something they never expected: American humanity. The propaganda had painted Americans as decadent and cruel. Instead, The prisoners encountered a casual, almost baffling kindness. This was most powerfully demonstrated at Christmas in 1943. Across the country, American churches and civic groups organized a massive donation drive, sending over 500,000 Christmas packages to the German POWs, to their enemies. Each package contained small luxuries like cigarettes, candy, and toiletries. At Camp Hearn in Texas, the local Methodist church choir came to the camp fence and performed Christmas carols in German. Women from the town baked cookies and cakes. The local Boy Scout troop delivered handmade Christmas cards. This wasn't a government program. It was a spontaneous act of charity from the very people whose sons and husbands were fighting and dying overseas. Oberleutnant Walter Müller, whose own brother had recently been killed in the Allied bombing of Hamburg, was shattered by the experience. "They know we are their enemies," he wrote, "yet they show us Christian charity. Not propaganda, but genuine kindness. What kind of people treat their enemies this way? Only those absolutely certain of victory and secure in their own power." The Christmas dinner itself was a feast beyond comprehension. Turkey, ham, pies, ice cream, a meal so lavish that many prisoners ate until they were physically sick. As one wrote, "We ate like kings. If they can feed their prisoners this way, what must their own soldiers eat?" This humanity extended beyond holidays when a Red Cross message informed Gefreiter Hans Miller that his son had died in a bombing raid. The American camp commander, a colonel, delivered the news to him personally and offered his condolences, man to man. It was a gesture of respect that defied the rigid hierarchies of the German military. The final moral death blow came in the spring of VE Day. As American troops liberated the concentration camps in Germany, the newsreels and photographic evidence were shown to the POWs. The reaction was volcanic. At first, there was widespread denial. "This is propaganda, a lie," they shouted. But the evidence was too overwhelming, too horrific to deny. They saw the skeletal survivors, the piles of bodies, the gas chambers. Letters from their own families back in Germany began to confirm the unthinkable horrors. For these men, who had clung to a belief in the honor of the German soldier, even as their faith in victory waned, this was the ultimate betrayal. The regime they had sacrificed everything for was not just defeated. It was pathologically evil. Hauptmann Walter Schmidt penned the most eloquent summary of their collective despair. "We thought we were warriors for a great cause. We discovered we were the tools of criminals. We believed we were bringing civilization to inferior peoples. We found that we were the barbarians. The Americans we called weak and decadent showed us what civilization actually meant. Their entire world, every belief they held dear, had been systematically and completely destroyed. All that was left was the truth." As the war in Europe ended in May 1945, the 371,000 German prisoners in America faced the prospect of repatriation with a complex mix of dread and hope. They were returning to a nation in ruins, a place of starvation and shame. But they were not returning as the same men who had arrived. The United States had, without a formal policy of reeducation in the coercive sense, conducted one of the most successful mass psychological transformations in history. The final months of their captivity were repurposed. American authorities, recognizing the unique opportunity they had, began to actively prepare the prisoners for the task of rebuilding a democratic Germany. Educational programs, which had started voluntarily, were expanded. Over 40,000 prisoners enrolled in courses on English, American history, and democratic governance. Universities like Chicago and Stanford provided correspondence courses and even sent professors to lecture in the camps. Camp newspapers, written and published by the prisoners themselves, shifted from defiant nationalist rhetoric to sober discussions about constitutional law, free market economics, and Germany's future. They learned about the Marshall Plan before it was even announced, internalizing the American idea that a former enemy should be rebuilt, not permanently punished, a concept utterly alien to the Nazi ideology of vindictive conquest. As one officer, Friedrich von Stobel, wrote, "They prepared us to rebuild our country. They gave us skills, knowledge, hope. They transformed defeated soldiers into future citizens." Between 1945 and 1946, the ships began to carry them home. They were returning to the rubble, but they carried with them an invaluable blueprint. They had seen with their own eyes how a democratic, industrial society functioned. They had witnessed American agricultural productivity, industrial efficiency, and the prosperity that a free society could generate. They knew that Reconstruction was not just a dream, but a tangible possibility, because they had lived inside a working model. These former POWs became the unwitting agents of Germany's Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle of the 1950s. They returned not as broken soldiers, but as missionaries of a new way. They brought American methods to German factories, American farming techniques to the Bavarian countryside, and American democratic ideals to the new West German government. The list of former prisoners of wars who rose to prominence is remarkable. Hans Kroll, a prisoner at Camp Shelby, became West Germany's ambassador to the Soviet Union. Walter Hallstein, who taught law classes to his fellow prisoners, became the first president of the European Commission, a foundational architect of the modern EU. They, and thousands like them in less prominent roles, became the managers, engineers, politicians, and farmers who rebuilt their nation from the ashes. As one later wrote, "We learned that prosperity came from freedom, not conquest. We saw that democracy created wealth, that diversity brought strength. These lessons, learned as prisoners, shaped the new Germany." The ultimate success of this unintentional program is told in the statistics. Of the over 370,000 German prisoners of war, there were only around 2,200 escape attempts, a rate of less than 1%. Most were recaptured within a day, often turning themselves in, confused and overwhelmed by the vastness of the country. Post-war surveys revealed that over 95% rated their treatment as good or excellent. Thousands maintained correspondence with American families they had met or worked for, some for the rest of their lives. Around 5,000 eventually immigrated to the United States. In 1985, a reunion was held in Texas. Over 500 former German prisoners of war, now old men, returned to America, many with their children and grandchildren, to show them where their lives had been fundamentally changed. They came not to a site of former imprisonment, but to the birthplace of their liberation. Liberation from an ideology of hate. The story of the German prisoners of wars in America is a testament to a profound truth. The most powerful weapon in the arsenal of democracy was not the atomic bomb. It was the fully stocked supermarket, the humming assembly line, the electrified farmhouse, and the kindness of a church choir singing carols in an enemy's language. The war was won on the battlefields, but the peace was won in the prison camps, where the sheer, overwhelming reality of a free and prosperous society accomplished what no army ever could: the complete and willing transformation of an enemy's mind. They arrived as conquerors, and they left as students, carrying with them the seeds of a new, democratic Europe planted in the fertile soil of the American heartland.